Now we're going to add a linear pattern of holes. Click the Linear Pattern command. Just as with any command, you can set the settings in the Property Manager in any order you prefer. And once you've done that, you can type the Enter key or click the green check to apply your settings. The Linear Pattern command is no different. Currently, the Direction 1 option is active, but I prefer selecting the feature first. Click the Feature Selection window, and then select the surface of the hole on the far end. You have to select the surface of the feature in order to select it. Now Cut Extrude 1 is in the Feature window. The reason I like to select the feature first is I can see a preview of the results of setting the direction options. It's easier and faster to add a linear pattern when you do this. Click the Direction window for Direction 1 and you'll see what I mean. Now select the edge of the part. Right away you can see the preview of the pattern is defined in the Direction 1 section. Set the distance to 3/4 of an inch and then change the number of instances to 5. The preview shows the pattern we're going to apply, but notice that there are two patterns. Cut Extrude 1 has two holes, so both holes are copied in the pattern. There's a simple solution to this problem, but it's nice to know that all the geometry in the feature will be copied in a linear pattern operation. So if you plan to use a linear pattern, you may want to limit the geometry in the feature to just the base geometry for the array. We'll be able to create a pattern of just one of the holes, but if the part was more complicated, this could be an impossible task. First, I'll give you a tour of the settings for this command, and then I'll show you the solution to the problem. Later in this lesson, I'll show you why you would not be able to solve this problem if the part was more complicated. Direction 2 will apply the pattern in a new direction. For example, you could create a grid of holes. We would need to select a lateral line to apply a second direction, and since there are no lateral lines on this part, I can't demonstrate the use of this setting now. But you will see how it works by the end of the lesson. You've already seen the Features to Pattern section, so let's scroll down to the Instances to Skip section. When you expand this option, the instances of the pattern are highlighted with a red dot. An instance in this case is a pair of holes. For example, the last hole in this row and the last hole in this row is an instance. To remove the instance from the pattern, click the red dot. The red dot serves as a placeholder for the instance. If you want to add an instance back to the pattern, click the red dot again. You'll learn more about bodies later in the course, so we'll skip this section. And the next section is the solution to our problem. With this option, you can select a single face. Before we select the face, clear the selections in the Features to Pattern window. Now click the Face Selection window, and then zoom in and select the surface of the hole. Now the pattern is applied to one hole. But as I said earlier, if the part was more complicated, we could not use this option. You'll see why in just a minute. Type the Enter key to create the pattern, and then save the file. Now let's quickly create a new part so that you can see how face patterns work. Create a sketch on the top plane, and then draw this profile. Set the right side to 1 inch. The angle to 20 degrees. And the width to 6 inches. Exit the sketch, and then open the Extrude command. Set the length of the extrusion to 3 inches, and then type the Enter key. Now make a sketch on the flat side of the part. And then set the view to Normal View. Draw a line from the middle of the right side of the part to the middle of the left side. And then change the line to a construction line. Now draw a circle on the construction line. Set the diameter of the circle to 1/2 inch. And the offset from the right side of the part to 3/4 inch. Confirm that the sketch is fully defined, and then click the Exit Sketch command. Click the Extruded Cut command, and then set the end condition to Through All. This is another example of why you would use the Through All end condition. We're going to make a pattern of holes extend along the part, so each hole will need to be longer than the last to pass all the way through the part. If we use the blind option, it's possible that the length of the hole would not be long enough to pass completely through the part. You'll understand this better when we create the pattern. Type the Enter key to create the hole. Now click the Linear Pattern command. Select the feature. Select the direction. Click the arrow to change the direction. Set the offset between the instances to 3/4 inch. And then set the number of instances to 5. The preview of this operation shows the problem you're about to see. Notice that it appears that the holes won't pass all the way through the part. You'll see that when we array the whole feature just as we're doing now, the holes will pass all the way through the part. But when we array just the face of the hole, the operation will fail. We're creating an array of hole features, so type the Enter key to create the pattern. As you can see, the holes pass all the way through the part. Now let's edit the pattern. Click the pattern, and then edit it. Now we're going to use the Face option. Clear the Features option, and then click the Faces window. Select the surface of the hole, and now I can tell you a little more about the Faces option. This option simply copies the faces on the features to create instances of the pattern. It requires less memory to create patterns this way, but the problem with this operation is the length of the holes change along the pattern, so the surfaces are not identical. In order for the Faces option to work, all the surfaces in the pattern need to be identical. The first hole in the pattern will be a through hole, and the next holes will have the same length. But they'll also be blind holes. The surfaces on the bottom of the holes will not be identical to the surfaces on the base feature because it's a through hole. So if you try to apply these settings, you'll get an error. So to summarize the main points of this lesson, plan for your patterns. If you intend to use a feature in a pattern, make sure the geometry in the feature is the geometry you want to use in the pattern. If you want to use a face in a pattern, make sure the geometry of the part is simple enough to use the Face option. One last thing and you'll be finished with this lesson. I want to show you how the Direction To option works. Clear the Faces window, and then use the Features window to select the hole. Now expand Direction To, and then select the bottom edge of the part. Set the spacing to 1 inch and the count to 2. As you can see, Direction To creates a grid. The direction doesn't have to be perpendicular to Direction 1, and it doesn't have to be on the same plane.